Hi, welcome friends. Another episode of the Louisville ProActivist Report. I have a great guest today. My guest is John Hicks, Libertarian candidate for governor. So welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rolf. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So you're running as a Libertarian. You're up against Matt Bevin, incumbent, as well as Andy Beshear. So what made you decide to enter this race?
It's a great year to. One of my pet issues is the two-party system and how it's broken. And this year is a great year to illustrate that. We've got two people running against each other that have been at war with each other for the past 4 years. It's nothing but a negative campaign. We're running on civility, among other things. So it's just a beautiful time for a libertarian to be running for office. It's also a beautiful time to be a libertarian. You know, the libertarians are the fastest growing party in the country and in the state. Actually, I think that the other two parties are actually losing members. We're gaining members. With the 2016 election, we got what we call ballot access here in Kentucky, where we moved up a notch in terms of the way that the state recognizes us. We can nominate people at our own primary, and they go automatically to the ballot. So our names will be on the ballot all across the state. We only had that for 4 years, so we want to take advantage of that. We think this is the time to really break out of the two-party system and get a third party established. So we have just this year and next year to do that. Next year, another presidential year. We don't know if we'll get another 4 years of ballot access or not. So we wanted to take advantage of that. The way the campaign has gone, it's just a beautiful time to run, because the more people I talk to, the more I realize that people hate the two-party system. They're disgusted with the two-party system. They really want to change. So one of the things, in addition to civility, I'm running on is election reform, where I've got a couple of proposals that will really radically change our democracy and get away from the two-party system.
And we'll get into that here in a minute as well. So, you know, a lot of my viewers will ask, hey, we know you're a lefty. Why are you having a libertarian on? And I tell them there's a lot of agreement between the left and between the libertarians. Not on everything, but there's a lot we can work together on. So for you, what draws you to being a libertarian, and you know, how did you end up running for the Libertarian Party?
I've been you know, these terms change their meanings over the years. Different people have different conceptions of what libertarian means. I think probably.
How would you define it?
We certainly in liberty. Basically, the Libertarian Party is getting to be a big tent party. It's still a pretty small party, but we've got a lot of different points of view represented in the Libertarian Party. Partly because it's the only party that tolerates different points of view. But the term libertarian really originally was coined by an anarchist. And we certainly have our share of anarchists within the Libertarian Party. People just don't want to have any government at all. But we've got you can come on in if you like.
I'm just seeing what you're doing here.
Yeah, I'm running for governor, and we are having a town hall meeting, and in the process, since we're having a little interview for the
Louisville ProActivist Report. So
Louisville ProActivist
live interview right now.
Yeah.
So
But you're welcome to pull up a chair and.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just stay here for a few seconds. I'm getting ready to leave.
Well, make sure you take my propaganda before you leave. I'm the Libertarian candidate for governor. Okay. There's going to be 3 names on the ballot. Not many people realize it, but we're going to be up there. Actually, you know, it's a short ballot next Tuesday. Only statewide candidates. We're going to have 4. There's only 7 offices up, and we're going to have 4 libertarians up for 4 of the offices.
Is it true there's going to have a impeachment on the ballot?
No.
I heard a rumor about that.
Well, not Tuesday. They're not ready for that. I don't know that would ever go on the ballot. But the way the impeachment works, of course, that's national and not state. This is just state on Tuesday.
So that's just some of Matt Bevin's propaganda.
I don't know. There's been a lot of propaganda this season, hasn't there?
Oh,
you know, I just read they spent they've spent $20 million between the two of them so far just on advertising. And it's all negative advertising.
Yeah. I'm hoping that the states will ratify a constitutional amendment to elect the president by popular vote.
Mm-hmm. I've got some ideas. Read my literature. I've got some ideas on election reform along that line. I don't really go as far as approach the electoral college. I think we should start at the local level and work up. We don't have a democratic system now with our two-party system. We got to get away from the two-party system.
I understand that the reason for the electoral college system in the first place was to protect the institution of slavery by giving the slave states an unfair advantage over the free states in the presidential elections.
I'll quibble with that, but probably I don't know, Rolf, if you want to quibble with that on tape or not. Yeah. Now I think there was a good. Basically, when their founders drew up the Constitution, they wanted to avoid having a parliament system the way the British did. They didn't want the Congress to elect the president. They wanted a separation there. And so they had to have some way of electing the president. And at that time, you know, we were a country of essentially sovereign states, you know, so they couldn't, they had no conception of having a nationwide popular vote. So they figured, well, each state can choose their, a set of people that will come together and vote for the president. And it was just a way of having something separate from the Congress to select the president. So I don't think it was as racist as people say. You know, we do have to confront this history of racism that we've had. I mean, slavery was a terrible institution, but I think they recognized it back in 1776. I think we knew that. I mean, you know, it was built into the Constitution that we would do away with the slave trade in X number of years. What was it, 25 years or 30?
Roundabout, yeah.
Okay. You know, people were conflicted then. I think there's a narrative that wants to make us more racist than we are. We certainly need to fight racism wherever we find it, but I don't think it's most people aren't. And I like the idea. You know, part of the problem with having a nationwide popular vote for president is that you could have. Right now, we're so divided as a nation that you could wind up with you know, one side of the country electing the president and the other side of the country feeling like they're not represented at all. So you need some kind of moderating force in there. I don't know. Electoral college might not be the way, but you need something, I think, rather than having a straight popular vote.
Well, I gotta go home and take care of this arthritic knee.
Okay. Well, good talking with you. My phone number is on the bigger brochure, so give me a call if you have any questions. Okay. Well,
That's some good impromptu stuff there. I like it.
Okay.
That's the joys of video. So
yeah.
Let's see. Yeah. So how would you define modern day libertarianism?
You know, I'll back away from that, because how would you define modern day democraticism or republicanism? Mm-hmm. Is there a way to do that? There is a libertarian philosophy. I mean, there'll be probably various libertarian philosophies if you ask different libertarians. But also, the Libertarian Party is simply a political party. It's just simply a way to exert some political influence on our government. So that we don't have to have one philosophy for that party. If we have one principle, here in Kentucky at least, I know we do ask that everybody who joins the party signs a non-aggression pledge. We say that we're opposed to aggression of any sort. That's the only single criterion that we have, and some people would say we shouldn't have that. But it's a way to kind of keep us grounded and to keep us from being taken over by some other faction, I guess. But obviously we stand for liberty, and I belong to the faction that calls itself, we call ourselves classical liberals. I have to be careful when I use that term because liberal means it's a fighting word to a lot of people. I'm not talking, when I say classical liberal, I'm qualifying it. I'm not talking about a Roosevelt liberal, a New Deal liberal, or the liberals that have come along since then. But the word liberal, of course, has the same derivation as libertarian. It comes from libertas or liber in Latin, meaning free or freedom. And it's part of the principles our country was founded on. And in a way, a classical liberal is very much a sort of a Jeffersonian Democrat or a Goldwater Republican, believing in the traditional values of a limited government, a democracy, but a limited democracy. And these ideas, I mean, when our country was founded, it was an exciting time. These were radicals that were putting our country together. We forget that. You know, what they did had never been done before. And the ideas that were permeating society at the time were radical ideas. We generally refer to them as the ideas of the Enlightenment, and usually we talk about John Locke as sort of the one of the propounders of the principles that were founded on, you know, we refer to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. John Locke talked about that. He actually talked about the three inalienable rights. He termed them the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to own property. So when people talk about life, liberty, and property, sometimes people will think, well, property doesn't have rights. And John Locke didn't say property had rights. Basically, back then, you know, they were coming out of a kind of a feudal society in England where you had your lords, your noble people that owned all the land. And Locke was saying, no, wait now, anybody should be able to own land, and anybody should be able to own property, and you shouldn't, the government and no one should be able to take away that property without due process. So that was a radical idea then. Anyway, so that's what I mean by classical liberalism, and that's the way I would describe myself.
Okay. Now for me, I'm big on third parties. I'm big on breaking the duopoly.
Absolutely.
And I get a lot of arguments thrown at me about being spoilers, this or that. You need to be a Democrat. You need to be a Republican. Mm-hmm. So when you made the choice to run, why not run as a Republican or a Democrat while a Libertarian? What do you tell people who think that third parties aren't viable or shouldn't be on the ballot? What's your take on all of that?
Well, I mean, a couple of things. There are a number of reasons. As I said, I was an old Goldwater Republican. I was a Republican a good part of my life, but the Republican Party sort of started moving towards away from these ideas of freedom. They wanted to start, I mean, some of them, to a great extent, wanted to start imposing ideas on people, forcing people to do this and do that. That's not my idea of a free society. So I felt a little alienated from the Republican Party because of that. And also I think the Democrats have always favored things like free speech, separation of church and state. I support that. All these are in the Constitution and Bill of Rights, of course. Democrats have gotten away from that. The Libertarians have held on to these principles. So that's one reason why I was attracted to the Libertarian Party. But also, I think the two-party system itself is broken. It doesn't matter which two parties we wound up with. It's just a stupid way to elect officials to run our government. It was not ever intentional. You know, our founding fathers warned us against what they called party or faction. They did not anticipate political parties at all. I mean, you know, they were really wise about so many things, and yet they were really stupid about that, because we just kind of fell into this system of electing representatives from our area to a legislature. So naturally we were voting for one representative, so that's a single member district, and we didn't think about runoff elections at the time. We just said whoever gets the most votes wins. So that means plurality elections. So you can win if 15 people are running. What you can win with I should know this a sixth of the vote. well, you can win with a 14th of the vote. How's that? It makes no sense. But we just kind of fell into that, and we've never gotten away from it. So that's why I think right now, you don't have to be a libertarian for it to be in your interest to vote libertarian, because any vote for a third party in this election, or any close election, will be a vote against the two-party system. I can win with just 34% of the vote if it's tied between the other two. But if I don't get 34% of the vote, and if I don't win, we can still really radically change our system just by having enough votes that we made a difference in the outcome. Because that demonstrates, it highlights how stupid it is to have elections just by plurality. We need to have runoffs so that you have to have a majority to win. That's the only way. You have to have runoffs if you're going to elect by a majority rule. So I'm advocating two steps, and the first step is runoff elections, and I'm saying with computers we don't need to go back a second time to vote. We can actually vote one time, but vote our first, second, third choice, what we call ranked choice voting, so that if nobody gets a majority the first count, you can go back and you recount the ballots of the person who came in last and count their second choice instead of their first choice. So it's just like a runoff election, but you don't have to go back as a second time to vote.
It's like an instant runoff. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. So let's with being a libertarian, you kind of ran into one of those obstacles last week where the debate was Northern Kentucky University, and you were not allowed in that debate. Unfortunately, this isn't the first time this election cycle this has happened. It did happen to Jeff Young in the Democratic primary at the KET event, which I did cover. So look for that video, and you can see us trying to get in the door there. So tell us about how that came about. What were they telling you? Did they contact you about it? How did it come to the fact that you weren't allowed on?
Well, there's been a series of 5 debates, and if I understand it correctly, one of them was a KET debate, 3 of them were League of Women Voters debates, and the one that you speak of at Northern Kentucky University, I believe was sponsored by NKU and by a local television station. I'm not sure of the criteria they had. I know the League of Women Voters had published their criteria, and the KET had published their criteria, their criterion, I should say. The KET criterion was that we had to raise $100,000. So it's completely based on money. Okay, we're a small party. We could have really focused on raising money, but that's really not what we're about. And it's just too bad that they run things that way, based on money. It points out how money is really skewing our democracy. The League of Women Voters, their criterion was different. They didn't require money. They required that we show up at 5% or more in a nonpartisan poll. Okay. The catch was, and they gave set a deadline date saying you have to show up at 5% or more in a nonpartisan poll by this date, and it was the end of September, I think. The catch was that come that date, there had been no nonpartisan polls that included all 3 candidates. So there was no way. There was no way we could have shown up. In the polls that had taken place at that point, we had shown up at 5% and 6%. There were 2 polls. They were partisan polls. I believe they were sponsored by the Democratic Party. I'm not sure. Different Democratic organizations. But we showed up at 5% and 6%. We've been all over the place with the polls. We were down to 1% on one of them, and then we were at 4% on another one, which was a nonpartisan poll. But 5% is a lot more reasonable than $100,000.
Right.
But how do you get that 5%? You got to prime the pump. If you really want to encourage people to run for office, and I thought the League of Women Voters did, would think that there would be they would do it like the Democratic primary debates, where they would gradually narrow the field. Start out with 42 or whatever, and then gradually narrow it so it's down to just a few. There are only 3 people on the ballot this year.
Right.
How can it not be reasonable to have at least one debate with all 3 candidates? Particularly, League of Women Voters had 3 debates. Couldn't they have had one debate where they had all 3 candidates there? And I mean, it's things like that that would help us prove that we can get to 5% or more. But we have to. We need name recognition. We need some publicity. So it's been a real education for me. In a way, we've been shut out in a number of ways. KET, for example, in the past has had forums where they would at least interview candidates. They didn't do that. League of Women Voters, last year I ran for the State House, and they had a forum for me, and I showed up. I was the only one that showed up out of the 3 candidates. Why couldn't they have done that for the governorship? I'm really disappointed I'm disappointed in both organizations, because they both should be nonpartisan and should be encouraging diverse voices, different voices, so people can make an informed choice. Now people are going to walk into the voting booth, and they're going to see a lot of people are going to see a third name there and say, "Who's he, and why didn't you tell me about him?"
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you're a lot nicer about this than I think I would be in your position. So for a moment, let me rant on your behalf to NKU, League of Women Voters. We want fair elections. We want to know about our candidates. We only have 3 candidates.
I was just going to let you know that the library will be closing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
But yes, NKU, League of Women Voters, what we need in the state and this country is free and fair elections. We need to know about all our candidates. He is a legitimate candidate. He deserves to be heard. The voters deserve to hear what he's running for, what he stands for. We can't make informed decisions without that. You have a great potential to put all of these candidates on the same stage so we can know all about them all at the same time, and you took that away from the voters. So shame on you for that. Get it together before the next elections, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
On behalf of all Kentuckians.
Okay.
So moving on, on a lighter note, so let's get to know you as a person a little bit. I am a policy-focused individual, but it is also good to know the person on a little bit on a deeper level. So just tell us about your background and your ties to the state here.
Well, I'm a native of Kentucky. I grew up here in Louisville. The Highlands, not too far from here. We're in the Highlands branch of the library, and Jeffersontown. Went to Seneca High School, class of '64. I spent a good number of years in the Fern Creek area. First working for GE at the Appliance Park. Got a job as a computer programmer there, and after a few years there, I quit my job and started a little newspaper in Fern Creek. And for 10 years, I published a community newspaper. And I should back up. When I first got out of college, I taught public school here in Jefferson County. Taught at Fern Creek High School and at Moore High School. So I've got three main fields where I've worked. Starting out, just 2 years in public school teaching, but that's 2 years more than my 2 opponents for governorship. And then most of my life in the IT industry, starting out as a computer programmer, system administrator, and so forth, web developer, and so forth. But took those 10 years out to do a community newspaper, and that was a real education. That was a great experience for me. What else do you need to know? Let's see about me personally. I've spent most of my life here in Louisville. I did leave town after I folded my newspaper and spent some time in Atlanta working for Coca-Cola, and then moved on down to South Florida. I was down there for 12 or 15 years in Palm Beach County. I was a political science major in college. Went to Stetson University down in Florida, which is a small Baptist school, and was a political science major, but my favorite subject really was economics, and have been interested in economics. I still find it a great subject, and I wish more people would study it. And I also studied history to a great extent. I was generally rotating between those three majors during my 4 years at school.
Okay.
Yeah, those are my three favorite subjects, I guess.
Okay. So let's. I know we're here at the public library. We've been given about 10 more minutes, so
Yeah.
let's use that to talk about your platform while we got a chance here. So I see there's mainly three major things on your website that I saw, and that is the election reform, the cannabis reform, and the teacher retirement reform. So we've talked about the election reform a little bit already. Let's dig into that a little bit more. I know you have a 3-tier plan that includes the ranked choice voting. It includes proportional representation. It includes any gerrymandering.
Well, yeah, actually, it's 2 tiers, but you get a 3-fer, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, the first, and it's 2 steps because they're both based on ranked choice voting. Okay, where you vote, you can have instant runoff votes, but you just go one time to vote, first, second, third choice, and you can have runoff votes that way. Using that same system of voting, you can go to multi-member districts. And you can cut the votes in a very similar way, and you wind up with proportional representation. By going to that second step, the multi-member districts, you do away with gerrymandering. Because you have a larger district to draw, it doesn't matter how you draw that district, you're still going to wind up with proportional representation representing everybody who votes in that district. So there's no point in gerrymandering.
That's awesome. Like I say, I'm a huge proponent of ranked choice voting. I have been for several years. So I was so happy to see a governor candidate put that as part of your platform. So thank you for that. Let's talk about the cannabis reform. I know you are for legalization, also expungement of records. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then decriminalization. I'm assuming you're for that as well.
Decriminalization of other drugs, you mean?
Well, marijuana in general.
Complete legalization of all of cannabis, okay, including recreational, medicinal, and industrial, okay. The whole genus of cannabis is legalized. We do lean. We've tried to simplify things in the campaign, but we certainly lean towards decriminalization of drugs in general to bring stuff out in the open so you can deal with the drug problems that you have.
Right.
But cannabis obviously actually solves more problems than it creates. It actually, where it's legalized, it actually reduces the opioid problem.
I agree. We've seen those results in the states where it is legalized.
Yeah.
Not to mention the tax income that we could definitely put to use in this state, as we all know.
Exactly.
The state needs the money.
Yeah.
And speaking of state needing money, another thing that that they could use a little bit of money on is teacher retirement and the pensions. And I can tell from your website that's a big issue for you. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, actually, Mr. Bevan is for pension reform too, and has made a focus on that. What I'm saying is that I'm a former school teacher, and I think I can understand the plight of the teachers. Mr. Bevan somehow got the teachers alienated from him. So I'm advocating working together with the teachers. I actually want to educational reform within public schools, in addition to any other independent or private schools or charter schools. But I think teachers are, if you empower teachers to reform, to innovate, the teachers are ready to do that. So there's an awful lot that can be done within our school systems that just needs a little leadership and empowerment. So I don't have that much difference with Mr. Bevan in terms of what he was trying to put the pensions on a sound footing too. So I don't want to take issue with that.
Okay. All right. So let's get into a few other issues here real quick. I know we don't have a ton of time, but we can touch on a few things real quick.
Sure.
So what do you think about expanded gaming in Kentucky?
Well, again, we've tried to focus on just a few other things, but that subject keeps coming up. We certainly, as libertarians, feel that you ought to be able to, gambling ought to be legal. It needs to be done carefully. I think the problem is that if you don't watch out, you grant a monopoly to various groups to run casinos, and of course we have essentially a monopoly with Churchill Downs now. So that makes it more difficult to reform that. But I think we should follow maybe the example of Indiana, where you've got casinos across the state and some competition. But it's got to be done carefully.
Okay. What are your views on healthcare in Kentucky?
Oh, good question.
I know that's a deep question. It requires a lot of time that we probably don't have.
Yeah, they're about to throw us out of the library here. The two segments of the economy, big segments of the economy that are most dysfunctional would be probably education and healthcare. Okay, and they're the two that are most controlled by the government. We've snarled up our healthcare system ever since World War II, where we associated our healthcare with health insurance, which provided as a benefit associated with your job. A really stupid way to do healthcare, because you're afraid to quit your job. Once you get sick, you can't quit you have to work at a job you hate. You know, doesn't make for an efficient economy. The states have put layer on layer of restrictions on that. The insurance companies, and then the federal government's come in and just made it worse. I kind of, Rand Paul uses the term, let's have more competition, and he says, gallbladders are us. Have a company, have different companies competing for. There's no reason why healthcare needs to be that as expensive as it is, and it's mainly because of regulation. Now, having said that, I can't, as a governor, wave a magic wand and make that happen. And we've got Medicaid and Medicare in place. I do not believe in pulling the rug out from under anybody. Okay, so I do not believe in taking away that safety net. I do believe in looking at it, studying it, and trying to see how we can make it more efficient.
Okay. I think we got time for one more kind of bigger subject here, so kind of tackle that quickly. We want to talk about energy here in the state.
Yeah.
Now, we are known nationally as a coal state. What is your take on the coal industry? The gas industry? What do you think about converting to green energy in the future? Where do you stand?
Well, the coal industry is on its way down, I think, largely just because it's facing competition. And it from gas to a certain extent, but also from solar and wind power. So it's certainly not the place of government to come in and save this industry, because it's been going downhill. That's a good example of why we don't need central planning for our economy. There is something to be said for trying to minimize the damage done to the environment by fossil fuels, and so I do feel that if we need to do something to minimize to fight man-made climate change that might be catastrophic, some sort of carbon tax or cap and trade system would be appropriate. The quick fix, though, is just to go to nuclear power. That would solve everything.
Do you have any safety concerns with that?
Oh, sure I do. You got to be careful about it, but I think things are a lot safer than they were, and I think, I favor a multifaceted or taking different paths. There's not one simple solution to our energy problem, but we should be looking towards. We're already seeing solar and wind power growing, possibly a carbon tax, and looking towards more atomic energy facilities. They're closing the
Yeah,
armory
see,
down.
they're
as
shutting
we
it down.
speak now, so-
I had some more questions,
Okay.
but we're gonna have to wrap it up there. So real quick, tell people where they can find you online, and then just kind of make a plea to the voter of why they should vote to you.
Okay, I'm running with Ann Cormican, Lieutenant Governor is my running mate. You can. The simplest way to find us is at hicksforkentucky.com. That will redirect you to hickscormicanforkentucky.com. We're also on Facebook at Hicks. You'll find us on Facebook if you just look for John Hicks, I think. What else?
Yeah, why should people vote for you? Let them know.
Well, really, anybody who's interested, you don't have to be a libertarian to vote for election reform. And a vote for our party this year will help all third-party efforts. Anyone who's interested in more diversity, more voices in the political field should do your best to disrupt this election and vote third party.
And thank you so much for coming on the show today. Best of luck to you.
Great to be here. Thank you for
Yes,
having
sir.
me, Will.
I'm glad to meet you here. Yes, if you like this kind of content, we got the election coming up. Share this out to everybody you know. There's more than two choices. We do have a third choice. We're wrapping it up right now, so give us 30 seconds.
Sure.
There's more than two choices. Break the duopoly. You have a great candidate here. He's a very honest man. He's got a good platform, so definitely give him your consideration. Please subscribe. Click that bell on YouTube. If you want to see more content like this, like and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And remember to always, always think critically.
Okay.